All right, welcome to TCI's preseason Clemson forecast. Each year we do this. Last year, went back yesterday, ran that on the website. Hopefully some of y'all saw that so you could see how right and how wrong we were last season. Last year we talked about how the two McGranahans were no longer in the video because the previous year they had picked 8-3, 9-4. You notice somebody's missing in the video this year. Qualk last year did pick Clemson to win it all, but he did pick them to lose a game. The three of us picked them to go undefeated. So, Qualk.
There's a trend.
Maybe next year. So Will says he knows what he's going to pick now. Obviously, this year, guys, much different expectations. Clemson made it to the top of the mountain. Last year, a lot of pressure. Everybody knew they were good enough. This year, some question marks. Will, let's talk first with you. What's your kind of forecast for the season?
Well, I mean, obviously, when you lose the five guys they lost on the offensive side, playmakers, that is, 6 overall, there's some question marks, and you kind of wonder, especially in those big games early in the season, how they're going to do. Will Kelly Bryant be able to handle the pressure against Auburn and with the national television audience, prime time?
You assume it's going to be Kelly Bryant?
Well, yeah, unless something happens in tomorrow's game, which we don't want to happen, So, yeah, I'm assuming it's going to be Kelly Bryant starting the Auburn game. How's he going to handle that? And then as you look at Louisville, how does any quarterback who plays in that game handle that atmosphere? And then the same thing at Virginia Tech a few weeks later, which to me is the most difficult of all the games. And I know everybody's like, oh, what about Louisville? Oh, Louisville. Louisville reminds me of Clemson. This year's Louisville team reminds me of Clemson 2001. Dynamic quarterback, good playmakers, horrible offensive line, and a defense that has question marks. That was 2001 Clemson. If you don't remember what happened that season, Clemson went 7-5 that year. And Woody Dantzler still had a great year, but they just had they were inconsistent in a lot of areas. And that's what this Louisville team reminds me of, especially the way they ended last year was very similar to 2000 Clemson. Started the year hot. Everybody talked about being a national champion.
Will loves to go back like 20 years ago and find parallels with what's going to happen.
Yes, exactly. Well, you look at quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Woody Dantzler, there's similarities. So I'm not saying Woody Dantzler was as good as Lamar Jackson, but there's similarities there. Dynamic quarterbacks, athletic. And, they lost that Clemson team, struggled at the end of the year, and then they struggled the next season. I think Louisville struggles this year. I don't think they're the third best team in the Atlantic Division. I picked NC State ahead of them in the ACC things. Voting. So when I look at this team, I look at this season, the one game I look at and says, okay, if I had to pick a game that Clemson's going to lose, it's going to be at Virginia Tech on September 30th.
All right, so you're picking, what's your season?
My season is, me and you talked about this several times. I think Clemson comes out of that first part of the month 4-1 with that one loss being Virginia Tech. I think by then they would figure out the quarterback situation definitely will be cemented. They'll definitely know what kind of team they have, and I think then they hit that spot of games where I think they're just going to roll because they're just far more superior talent. I do not think there's any slip-up game. Everybody keeps talking, well, there's always one game they're going to slip up on. Not really. They've only done it once since 2011, so I'm going to go with the average that they don't slip up. And so it goes down to that Florida State game. Comes down between Clemson and Florida State. I think Clemson wins it at home. I think Florida State's overrated. Again, surprise, Florida State's overrated. And I think Clemson wins the ACC and goes back to the college football playoff, 11-1.
All right, how are we going to do in the playoff?
They won't make it to the championship game. I think Clemson doesn't have that dynamic person at quarterback. I think
even if they play Ohio State.
Well, if they play Ohio State, that's different. Then all bets are off. But Clemson doesn't have that quarterback yet. I think they got a quarterback. They can have a game manager who can be good, like a Kelly Bryant stuff, can get them to the playoffs because they're so good on defense and they got so much good playmakers, and the offensive line's good. But I don't see them, in a playoff game. Kelly Bryant. I hate to say that because I don't want to diss him because I don't know, but I just don't see that dynamic player at quarterback that Deshaun Watson was. Deshaun Watson was a difference maker for Clemson the last 2 years in those kind of games, and I don't think Clemson has that right now.
So I know you've written it, but just to be clear, you're expecting Kelly to be the guy the whole season.
I am. I think Kelly Bryant is gonna. I think he's not the passer Deshaun Watson was and never will be, but he does other things that I think that Tony Elliott does it as good as anybody. He adjusts to what, and if you don't remember, go back to the the 2014 Russell Athletic Bowl, Cole Stout, who looked horrible all year long, and then against Oklahoma, he looked like the Heisman Trophy winner. Well, what was the difference? Tony Elliott was calling the plays. He goes to what the strength of that player is, and I think he does it as well as any coordinator in the game, and that's why he's considered one of the best in the country. That's why I think Kelly Bryant will be all season long and will play well, and will put Clemson in position to win the ACC.
All right, Gavin, you've heard Will, 11-1, ACC champs, make it to the playoff, don't make it to the title game. All right, what do you think we're going to see this season?
Okay, so I agree with Will in the fact that Clemson's going to go 11-1. Clemson's going to win the ACC championship for the third straight year, and Clemson's going to make it back to the college football playoff. But
Okay, Gavin's done.
But with that said, I see Clemson taking a different path there than Will does. I think Will was talking about the Louisville game. I think that's the game that Clemson's going to drop early in the season. I think on the road, Louisville's lost 3 straight games to Clemson by 1 score or less. I think this is the year that Louisville at home with the Heisman Trophy winner from last year, Clemson's uncertain situation at quarterback early in the season, a tough early road test. I just think the quarterback position is going to decide that game ultimately. Lamar Jackson's going to make some big plays in that game. I think that's going to propel Louisville over Clemson in that game, and I just think it. After that, I think Clemson will bounce back from that and run the table the rest of the way. I think before that game, I think Clemson will win that. Jarrett Stidham, I think with the last time he played was 2015, and he played against some Big 12 defenses that aren't, as we all know, aren't the best. I mean, and so I think Clemson's defense, which is going to be the strength of the team, is going to give him a lot of trouble at home in that game. And I think Clemson's going to build a lot of momentum after losing to Louisville early in the season, in my opinion, and going to just run the table the rest of the way and get back to the college football playoff. Florida State, I see the offensive line versus the defensive line is just the obvious what the difference between those two teams. Both teams have a ton of talent across the board, but that's the one in the trenches I think will decide that game. Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, I think those guys will help the defensive line just put a ton of pressure on Florida State, and that'll be the difference. And Clemson will go back to the AC championship and beat Miami, and then get back to the college football playoff.
How do you see him doing in the playoff?
I'm with Will. I just think without Watson was just so critical and it just clutch all the time, just never phased. I'm just not sure that with a new quarterback that Clemson would be able to get over that hump it takes in those tight games, and just when they needed a big play, Watson would come up with it. And I'm with Will. I'm not confident that with the quarterback situation that they could do what it takes to win it all, but I do think they'll get back to the playoff.
All right, 11-1. Both of those guys have us making the playoff. Gosh, I almost want to do something different just so we don't have a lot of the same up here. But in agreement with these guys, I do think Clemson suffers a loss. I'm leaning more towards Gavin's angle. I do think going on the road the first time, I think that's going to be a big challenge. I think we saw what happened with Louisville, Florida State last year. They kind of got rolling and then just kind of steamrolled the Noles. I don't think Clemson's going to get steamrolled, but I think Louisville will get some things going during that game, and it'll be a little bit harder for a first-year quarterback. I do think by the time we finish the Louisville game and come back home for Boston College, I think we see a different quarterback for Clemson. So I think Kelly makes it. Initially, I thought maybe we'd see a change in the Auburn game. Doesn't look like that based on what we're hearing coming into the season. But I think by the time we play Auburn, by the time we go on the road for Louisville, if Bryant does struggle, especially Clemson loses, expectations are much, much different than when Deshaun came along. I think there'll be a little bit quicker trigger. I think we'll see one of the other guys get a shot, and I think we'll see the passing game improve as the season moves along. Florida State, gosh, I wish we could do these videos after tomorrow night. We'd have a lot better idea after watching Alabama and Florida State play, but agree with what these guys said. I don't think Florida State's got the offensive line to come into Death Valley, beat Clemson with the defense that they've got. I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb. I do have us 11-1. I do have us winning the ACC. I'm going to go ahead, since both these guys said we lose in the playoff game, I'm going to pick us to make it back to the title game. Don't think Clemson wins it this year, but I do think, especially from what I saw from Ohio State last night, I think some of the other teams, there's a little too much hype for some of the other teams out there. Southern Cal, I think maybe one of those as well. I think if, I'd sign up today if Clemson could play Ohio State in a playoff game, and I would put all my money on Clemson to win that game. So we'll have to see what the matchups end up being. I'm going to take a flyer, pick Clemson to make it to Atlanta. Don't get it done this year, but being in the title game 3 years in a row would be incredible. Just making the playoff again this year for this team would be a great season. I think everybody would be thrilled, all the Tiger Nation out there. So let's hope that all of us are right, that Clemson can win another ACC championship, this time up in Charlotte in front of another crowd that'll probably have 60,000 plus Clemson folks. A lot of excitement. Obviously, we're not buying some of the hype for Florida State that's out there among others in the media. We'll see how that unfolds the next couple of weeks. Obviously, Clemson's got to get the offense cranked up. No questions on defense. And another exciting season coming. Will's got something he wants to say. Let me go to him for you.
Since you said they're going to go play for the national championship, we both didn't. So me and Gavin might be not here next year.
I didn't say that's why I did that. I don't know. That's true.
Now that I think about it.
That's a good point. Best is the standard, right?
Yeah.
I didn't pick Clemson to win, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we're all right. Clemson gets back to the ACC. I think three of us would be thrilled to either be going to the Rose Bowl or the Sugar Bowl. I would love to go to the Sugar Bowl. Never been to New Orleans. Would love to go to Rose Bowl as well with all the pageantry out there. So
I want to go to the Rose Bowl.
Be nice if Clemson fans could experience that this season. I know everybody spent a ton of money last year going to the Tampa for the championship game. So save your pennies during the fall. Might need to spend some more money come late December. That's all we've got here for our 2017 season prediction video. Tons of